Hi Math 6-5. This is the video for lesson 118. It's more division. So I'm gonna jump right into it. I don't think on lesson 116, I don't think I told you the time test. I apologize. For Monday, April 20th, your time test is time test K, which is located on page 203 in your test and worksheet book. Sorry, I think I forgot that on 118, and 116, the video. And if I didn't, and it's a repeat, sorry. Okay, 118, division, some more division. So let's get started. Divide 6/10 by 5. So let's give ourselves some space to work and set up our division box. Okay, remember we have our dividend divided by a divisor. Dividend goes in and our divisor goes on the outside. Okay, and the first thing I do when I'm dividing by a decimal is I go ahead and bring that decimal up and I put in my 0 there, because there's a 0 here. And I could go ahead and multiply that out if I wanted, okay? So I'll show you why that's okay. So 0 times 5 is 0, subtract, and you get 0, and you bring down your 6. So that's why it's okay to go ahead and put that 0 right there, because it's gonna be 0 no matter what. Okay, so now, starting my division problem, 6 divided by 5, the closest I can get without going over is 1. 1 times 5 is 5. Subtract and I get 1. Now, in the past, we've been doing this as like a remainder. But instead, what we're going to do now is we know in decimal numbers, I can add as many zeros here as I need to add. And it doesn't change the value of my original number here. So I'm going to add this 0 up here. That's a brand new 0, and I'm going to use it to bring down all the way to there, so that I can have my new division number, my new division problem, excuse me. So now I have 10 divided by 5, which is 2. 2 times 5 is 10. I subtract, and I end up at 0. So I don't need to add any more zeros, because I'm good. I mean, I could, and it would still keep adding zeros here, but why would we do that extra work when it's not necessary? So our new step in our division problem is, instead of writing a remainder, because we don't typically do that with decimals. With whole numbers, we do remainders. It depends on the problem, but a decimal problem is not something we do remainders on. So when you end up in what looks like a remainder, we add that 0, because that will not change our original problem, and we bring it down, and then we divide as we already know. So our answer for this one would be 12 hundredths. Okay, so let's do a few of these. So I have 3/10 divided by 4, dividend divided by divisor. So putting my dividend under, dividend goes in, divisor's out. And the first thing I'm going to do is go ahead and bring up my decimal. And because that's a 0, I know I can bring up my 0 right there. Okay? I can go through and run through why that's okay. Again, 0 times 4 is 0. Subtract, and I end up with that division problem, 3 divided by 4. Okay? So 3 divided by 4 is 0. Okay, 0 times 4 is 0. Subtract, and I get 3, which again, it looks like that should be a remainder, but we don't do remainders in division. So I'm going to throw in another 0. I'll put it in a different color. I probably should have done that up there to make it stand out. And I'm going to go ahead and bring it down to here. Okay, so I just added that 0. Doesn't change my number at all. So now I have a new division problem. 30 divided by 4 is 7. 7 times 4 is 28. And when I subtract, 30 minus 28 is 2. So again, it looks like I have a remainder, but this is a decimal, so we don't do remainders. So I'm going to add in another 0, and I'm going to bring it down. And still, I have not changed the value of my original number at all. I'm going to bring that 0 down. Now I have a new division problem. 20 divided by 4 is 5. 5 times 4 is 20. Subtract, and I end up with, I end up with 0. So now I can be done. And my answer is 75 thousandths. Okay? So that is how you add in the zeros after and bring them down, and it does not change the value of your original dividend at all. But it helps you get to a final answer because we don't do remainders for decimals. Excuse me. Okay, so let's look at, so that's dividing a decimal by a whole number here. Now here we're dividing a decimal by a whole number, but the whole number is 10 and 100, and we could do it times 1,000 if we wanted to also, which we should do. So let's look at, when we would take a decimal and we would multiply it by 10, we would move the decimal place. Let's look at an example of that. If my problem had said 3.4 times 10, remember we moved the decimal place, the amount of zeros we were multiplying by, and it became 34. Okay? Division's the exact opposite. So I'm going to take my decimal here, and I'm going to say 3.4 divided by 10. And so when I multiplied, my number got bigger. When I divide, my number is getting smaller. So we're going to move our decimal point to the left this time. Multiplication went to the right. Okay? Multiply. Our decimal moved to the right. So divide, it's going to move to the left. Okay? So on my original problem, I have 3 4/10 divided by 10. So I have 1 0 in 10. So I'm going to move my decimal point one place left. And when I do that, it's a decimal point and 3 4, and I put my 0 in because that's just the proper way to write it, and my answer is 34 hundredths. Okay? If I had to 3.4, 3 4/10 divided by 100, I would take my decimal point, and I have 1 2 zeros. So I would move it 1 2 places to the right and put it right here and fill in that hole with a 0. So my answer would be decimal point 034, decimal point 034, which is 34 thousandths. Let's keep going and do 3.4 divided by 1,000 and see what that would be. So my decimal point's right here. I have 1 2 3 zeros that I'm going to move my decimal point 3 places to the left. 1 2 3. My decimal point's going to end up right here. I have 2 empty places that I need to put zeros in. So I have my decimal point, and then 1 2 zeros, and then 3 4, and I put my 0 up front because that's the proper way to write it. And my answer becomes 34 10,000ths. Okay? So let's look at another one. 3 5/10 divided by 100. So I said that when I divide, I'm moving my decimal point to the left. Okay? So I have to move my decimal point 1 2 places. So 1 jump, 2 jumps will be right here. And I fill in that 0. So I have a decimal point and then a 0. I'm just copying now. And a 3 and a 5. And I write my 0 up front because that's the proper way to write it. And my answer is 35 thousandths. Okay? Now, if you wanted, you could work these out in long division where you keep adding zeros and you should get the same answer. When it's divisible by 10 or 100 or 1,000, this is a shortcut way to work it. Okay? But if you worked it out the long way of division, you would get the same answer. Okay? So it's just the moving of the decimal points. When we multiply, this is what you need to remember. When we multiply, and this is by 10, 100, and 1,000, it goes to the right, your decimal point. Okay? Okay, and when you divide by 10, 100, 1,000, that's as far as we're going for now. Your decimal point goes to the left. So that's the shortcut if your whole number is 10, 100, or 1,000. If your whole number is not 10, 100, or 1,000, you have to work it out this way. Okay? So that is lesson 118. So these can be done mentally, or you can physically write moving the decimal place. Either way, it tells you to mentally perform it. If you write your little humps or jumps or whatever you want to call them to fill in zeros, I call that mental. I think that is perfectly fine. This is not mental. This is the long way. This would be more mental. Okay? So your practice problems on page 610 ask you the first half to just divide and the second half to mentally perform it. So like I said, if you have to write the little jumps, that's okay. That's still doing it mentally. That's not doing it the long way. And if you feel more comfortable doing it the long way and not doing it mentally, that's fine too. Whatever gets you to the right answer and helps you understand it. Okay? Though, let's see, all we have left are lesson 119 and 120. So we're getting super duper close to the end. Good job, guys.